Hi all, thank you for joining today. I'm Edward, Employer Engagement Lead at the Social Mobility Commission, and welcome to today's Social Mobility Commission Masterclass series of webinars for employers. Today's session, we're going to be focusing on apprenticeships and the role that employers can play in strengthening social mobility through their apprenticeship programs and building skills for life. It's also National Apprenticeship Week this week, and the theme for this year is Skills for Life. Considering how apprenticeships can help individuals to develop the skills and knowledge required for a rewarding career and employers to develop a workforce for future-ready skills. That's with a focus on how apprenticeships are the future of business success, helping to build future careers, particularly in the increasing apprenticeship opportunities available in digital, data, the green economy, environmental, and technological roles. So our role at the SMT is to ensure that no matter what their background, everybody has access to these roles. If we just move on to the next slide. Today we were just going to explore how apprenticeships fit into social mobility and how they can build skills for life. Employers and training providers rely on apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship schemes to provide new opportunities, upskill people from inside and outside their own organisation, and contribute to a more innovative and inclusive workforce. So I'll start off by considering a few of the key actions from our apprenticeship toolkit that we advocate and recommend that all employers and training providers can implement to improve socioeconomic diversity of their apprenticeship programs. So I'm also pleased today to be joined by Harry Morgan, Skills for Jobs Lead at Microsoft. I'll be sharing the experience of the Microsoft apprenticeship program and how it has empowered over almost 30,000 apprenticeships since it was founded. Since it was founded in 2010 to build a career in technology and digital. I'm also joined today by Jessica Lee Jones, co-founder and CEO of Inungo Solutions. And Jessica will discuss the role of apprenticeships in upskilling individuals and workforces to help solve key skills gaps. So Jessica was appointed as a non-executive director for the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education in June 2018. So Jessica also authored the paper L&D's Role in Enabling Social Mobility in collaboration with the Open University. So welcome, Harry, and welcome, Jessica. Just moving on to the next slide. But just a bit of housekeeping before we start. So if you do have any questions, please pop them into the question box throughout the session and presentations, and we will endeavour to answer your questions at that Q&A session at the end. But if we don't have time, we will get back to you after the session. So this webinar is being recorded and is available to watch afterwards on our website after today's live event. So if we just move on to the next slide. So now if we just click through, now just looking at how apprenticeships fit into social mobility. So I just want to start by mentioning that our research does show that the majority of apprentices are not from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So perhaps this is an obvious statement to some and not much of an obvious statement to others. But we tend to find that policymakers and employers alike often talk of apprenticeships as being by default a social mobility tool helping the disadvantaged, but this is not necessarily the case. Having said that, if apprenticeship programs are targeted apprenticeships are one of the most effective tools of improving social mobility and an effective mechanism to allow employers to build diverse and talented workforces. So I'm sure everybody on this call is aware of the benefits that apprenticeships give. So to workplace learners, so enhanced career earnings, continued education, richer, more fulfilling working lives. So they also play their part in closing the class pay gap, while also providing people with the chance to earn while they learn. Something that's a crucial aspect for those from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They do also offer a non-degree route to higher skills. So if they are targeted, they can provide a pathway for social mobility that's an alternative to a residential 3-year degree that is usually associated with strong social mobility outcomes. So if we just look at the current context, what's the current landscape of apprenticeships? So as part of our research program in 2020, we published a report looking at apprenticeships and social mobility. So the report did find that disadvantage gaps from those from lower socioeconomic background existed throughout the apprenticeship cycle and journey. So from employer selection, the value and quality of the training, the probability of the apprentice progressing, and career earnings. However, it did also show that apprentices can be a powerful tool, and apprenticeships can be a powerful tool in if they are targeted correctly. So the report found an earnings boost when a learner from a low socioeconomic background overcomes those barriers. They do get an earnings boost from completing an apprenticeship. So if we just move on to the next slide. So in response to the report that I just mentioned, employers were asking us what they can do to support social mobility through their apprenticeship programs. So as part of the employers program here at the Commission, we published a toolkit aimed at giving some practical tips and actions that employers could take to diversify their apprenticeship programs to support social mobility. So the toolkit was kind of designed as a roadmap for anybody working in apprenticeships who is committed to improving social mobility. So it included recommendations on data collection, hiring, outreach, progression. It also included case studies and best practice guidance from employers about what they had done to improve their diversity of their apprenticeship program. If we move on to the next slide, we can take a look at a few of the key actions from the toolkit. So if we just pop, yeah, that's great. So if we just take a look at some of the key actions from the toolkit that we advocate and recommend that all employers and training providers can implement to improve socioeconomic diversity of their apprenticeship program. So so if we just take one example on here, so data. So data is really key. So when considering socioeconomic diversity data, it is imperative that employers develop better data sets on socioeconomic background and ones that are equivalent to what is currently available for other diversity characteristics. So we know that for employers and training providers, measuring socioeconomic background of apprentices and potential recruits is a critical step, but it is quite tricky process. It's not straightforward, and it's not as embedded into organizational thinking as a collection of other diversity data. So as part of that, we produced guidance on the best questions to ask to find that information out from your employees. So the key question we recommend to ascertain socioeconomic background of your employees is what was the occupation of your main household earner when you were aged 14? So we recommend using this question as it's the best and most accurate measure to assess someone's socioeconomic background. It's also the easiest to understand for employees, and it's also gets the highest response rates in testing. So we would recommend, no matter where you are on your journey, to think about collecting data and really bringing that into your organisation, and ones that are equivalent to the same as other diversity characteristics. If we look at another example here on the page, so outreach. So something that outreach is key, particularly if you're just starting up on your apprenticeship program, and you're thinking about how do you want to reach out to possible apprentices. So employers should look to outreach programs to recruit apprentices who aren't currently on your network. So rather than expecting them to come to you, do some research, or you could partner with relevant organisations that already have the connections and the links to different organisations. So one thing we suggest is developing a clear picture of who you want to reach and how this relates to your organisational goals. So thinking about backgrounds, experiences, locations, and how that could feed into your outreach approach. Another kind of key critical thing is providing outreach programs in state schools and further education colleges that will encourage individuals to consider apprenticeship programs and really consider offer them the benefit of what an apprenticeship program can give to them, particularly thinking about those learners that might not be aware of what is involved in an apprenticeship. Now looking another one on here, so looking specifically of culture within your organisation. So thinking about ways to improve the culture with your organisation to support apprenticeships through your apprenticeship programs. So one thing we advocate for is thinking about providing a range of contact points for apprentices across different levels of your organisation. So for example, through staff networks, mentoring programs, or buddy schemes. So there might be questions your apprentices would rather ask a peer rather than a senior manager. So linking to that as well, educate and train your managers on pastoral support that they can offer apprentices. So particularly where there might be additional needs. For example, if someone was new to the workforce. Another thing we recommend is supporting and resourcing an apprenticeship network, and you could perhaps link it to your other staff networks. So if you're a smaller organisation or an employer, you could signpost to other apprenticeship networks that exist out there that your apprentices could get involved in. And then just looking another one on here, so progression. So progression is key to this as well. It's not just about getting on an apprenticeship, it's also about progression within that apprenticeship and your wider organisation. So one thing we recommend is developing progression pathways. So whether that's to a higher level apprenticeship or a job in your organisation or wider industry. So be active in enabling apprenticeships, apprentices to achieve their career goals and applying the things that they've learned on their current apprenticeship program. So for example, you could design a progression pathways from level 2 upwards. So we would say talk with your apprentices about their next steps. So don't just leave it to the last minute. Start the conversations early, and this is a conversation that a manager could have with an apprentice and regularly talk to them about what their next steps are following that the completion of that current apprentice. And then finally, just one other piece here that we do recommend, so levy sharing. So there are several levy sharing schemes. So if you are a large employer, think about what you're doing with any unspent levy. So for example, the co-op levy sharing scheme that some of you might be aware of, it's where the co-op has got a group of employers together and they pool their unspent funds, and they use it for SMEs in their local areas. So if it is something that your organisation does have, definitely consider the various levy sharing schemes that are out there. So yeah, that was just a brief overview of some of the actions from our apprenticeship toolkit, which is part of our employers program. So really, for the kind of the main event for today, I would like to bring in Harry, Skills for Jobs lead from Microsoft, who's going to be talking about connecting talent to opportunity and the Microsoft Apprenticeship Program. So yes, I'll hand over to Harry.
Thanks, Edward. It's always daunting to be in an employer masterclass, but then also to be called the main event. So I think all of this is the main event, but thank you, Edward. I think first off, happy National Apprenticeship Week. At Microsoft, we are long-time supporters of National Apprenticeship Week, but also the Skills for Life message that is being shared far and wide across the UK over the course of this week and beyond. We're thrilled to be supporting Social Mobility Commission and also to be reunited with Jessica, who we at Microsoft have had the opportunity to work and learn a lot from. So today I plan to talk about a few things over the next 15 minutes or so. One of them is Microsoft's approach to apprenticeships and the journey that we've been on along the way, how we work with customers and partners in the UK to accelerate the number of apprenticeships across the country. And perhaps that's you too, or could be in the future. And then also, obviously, to share some perspectives on how apprenticeships are being used to help people into amazing technology careers from all backgrounds, of all ages and all stages. And I'd really like this to be the start of our journey together. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about how we can, accelerate technology careers in your organisation, please do either connect on LinkedIn or perhaps join us at an upcoming roundtable that we'll share a bit more about later on in the session. So first off, I'm going to, if we go to the next slide, please. Sorry, I forgot I had to say that. Thank you so much. So first off, a bit of, I'm going to set our journey in a bit of the Microsoft context. So for those of you who know Microsoft, perhaps just as kind of a large tech company, we are in the UK, we've been here for about kind of 30 odd years. We have a number of different sites across the UK, and our mission is to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. And at the heart of this really is increasing access to digital skills. So you can see on this slide here, we have Satya Nadella, our CEO, saying that we need to ensure that the growth we drive reaches every person, organisation, community and country. For me and the work that I do, I probably should have said that at the start, but the work that I do through Skills for Jobs is really about how do we support those that are most likely of being left out by that opportunity? How do we support underserved and underrepresented communities to thrive in this technological world? So as technology advances, how do we make sure that it doesn't leave people behind? And we do fundamentally believe that a lot of that comes with increasing the number of digital skills in young people and people of all ages, and enabling organisations to think differently about how and where they hire and develop their talent. Next slide, please. So, but as many of us know, and I think many of us have heard this a lot, but there is obviously a digital skills gap that continues to permeate. And I think one of the things throughout the course of the pandemic that we saw is that actually digital transformation of all different organizations accelerated. So, we are having all these solutions and all these things that are happening around tech is advancing quicker than our ability to use them. I think the stat on the left-hand side was from the government a few years ago. I actually think it's probably more than 82% now of roles have some form of digital skills. But we know from some research with LinkedIn that they're expected to be about 3 million new tech jobs by 2025. and around 60% of employers we've surveyed are expecting their reliance on advanced digital skills to increase within the next 5 years. So we see apprenticeships as being that great way to support organizations to get the skills, the important skills that we know are necessary both for organizations to thrive, but also for the UK as a whole to succeed, and to be competitive no matter what industry you're in. And the industry thing is really important because I'm sat here in Manchester actually at the moment because we're doing another event with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and many other partners and customers from across the region. And as I was walking here, I went past Old Trafford football ground, and it reminded me that technology is in absolutely every industry and in almost every single role as well. So I was inspired by the fact that Manchester United recently hired their first ever head of data science, and ASOS, the fashion brand, are now hiring, or at least they were, more software developers than they are fashion buyers. And we're seeing that even those industries and those technology companies that what aren't traditionally technological, they have some form of technology in them. And actually it means that no matter what industry you are in, the chances are that technology is going to enable you to kind of your organization to thrive, and apprenticeships are a great way to get that new kind of skill set into your organization. And I think, there's one stat I've got here, which is really about kind of even the industry with the lowest proportion, which was manufacturing, in a survey done by the Learning and Work Institute, still nearly 9 in 10 employers said that basic digital skills are important for their workforce. So it really is everywhere. So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, please. For us, taking the message around skills, but also going through to kind of why is, how does that support, the benefits of apprenticeships in every organization, and tech apprenticeships is something that we are particularly passionate about. I think there's a few things here. One, we know full well that, it provides new perspectives, new skills. It enables people organizations to thrive. We just heard from somebody recently that said, actually, it was quite daunting because he was one of the first ever Microsoft apprentices when there was a cohort of 6. And now we've grown that over the years, and he's got great opportunities to share perspectives with different apprentices, connect on different skills, do different roles. And I think that's probably going to be the same for other organizations who are just getting started. You're always going to start somewhere, but that community will grow, and those apprentices can learn from each other and also from full-time employees in your organization. It provides an opportunity for organizations to hire from a wider, more diverse pool of talent. And also, as Edward mentioned previously, it's also about how do organizations really, support the critical process of social mobility and also drive diversity and inclusion throughout organizations. Microsoft apprenticeship program, which I'll talk about a bit more in a sec, 86% of the people that have been through that program say that it helped to improve their path in life. And then 7 out of 10, so about 70% of apprentices on the program say that, going through this has helped them achieve a higher socio-economic status. So at least they think than their parents. So we're really thinking about how does this, how can apprenticeships be used across the country to drive that social mobility. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I think I'm going to just quickly touch on this one because I'm not immune to the fact that actually hiring an apprentice and bringing apprentices into your organisation is not a challenge. There's lots of different challenges there. It's knowing where to start, what are the cost implications, are you hiring the right roles, etc., etc., etc. So I just want to say that I'm very aware that it's not necessarily easy, and potentially you're on this session now to kind of really understand how do I even go about that. Hopefully we'll have a couple of clear calls to action in a second, but I also invite you to join Microsoft and others to kind of really go on a journey to think through how do we tackle those challenges and make sure that your organization is ready to for apprenticeships. Next one, please. So what are Microsoft doing about this? Microsoft has long been committed to skills and long been committed to apprenticeships. We're helping employers to overcome their barriers and build a strategy that helps them work future-proof your organization and your particular workforce. So Get On, you may have heard of it, you may not, but it is our commitment to help 1.5 million people build tech careers, the skills for tech careers, And then critically, it's once you've got those skills, how do we help connect 300,000 people to tech job opportunities? And we do that by advancing digital skills and helping people gain the skills that's relevant for them, no matter where they're starting from, and also helping people to get into apprenticeships through our partners. So if that feels like something that aligns with you, please get in touch and see how we can you can support. But really, we're looking at bringing together skilling programs to help people build careers in tech. We're and also looking to rally our customers and partners to really think differently about skills and talent. So how does that really go into apprenticeship? So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, I think one of the things that we are, would you mind? Yeah, thank you so much. So Edward mentioned earlier it was almost 30,000, but really we're looking at, I think now it's about over 40,000 people have gone through a Microsoft apprenticeship. So we for many years had a small but mighty number of apprentices working in Microsoft's headquarters in Reading. But actually the Microsoft apprenticeship program stretches well beyond the Microsoft company. Microsoft is a company with thousands of customers, partners in our ecosystem. You may be one of those. And actually since 2010, we've helped over 40,000 amazing people build their career in tech. How does that work? So we work with our network of customers and partners and training providers to create high quality apprenticeships that have Microsoft curriculum and content in them. So you may be doing a level 3 data analysis apprenticeship, but you could be working at a small partner such as Phoenix, where you may be working at a fashion retailer. And they are employers that have decided that actually a Microsoft apprenticeship, they need technology. They are bringing this apprenticeship into their organization to help them fill the talent gaps that they have within their strategy. And I think there's two things here that we're really proud of, and I think is kind of two learnings that we've had too. One of them is that apprenticeships are not just for 16 to 25-year-olds, and they're not just for manual jobs. We are living proof of this, and our customers and partners are living proof of this, of people that are going into technology apprenticeships. We are also seeing employers use apprenticeships and boot camps, digital skills boot camps, critically to help with training the existing workforce, taking advantage of the fact that people might be in the organization for a while, but actually they then go on a career apprenticeship. And there's one customer we had that had 300 people on career apprenticeships as an opportunity to upskill their existing workforce. Some of them were senior vice presidents, and I think I even had an age of 58 of people who are going on those apprenticeships to help learn and redevelop the skills that they need. The second key point is that apprenticeships are for everybody at every age and stage. And if you go on to the next slide again, please. One of the greatest stories that I love is of Pillarina. And Pillarina spent 15 years working as a casino croupier. The only technology she really used was Candy Crush, so she says, and she used a little bit of Excel, but that was about it. When she lost her job in the pandemic, she decided to use those transferable skills, the things that she loved around data, technology, data and numeric accounting skills, and working in a casino with high sums of cash, turning that into a data mindset, doing a data skills bootcamp, and now she's doing an apprenticeship at the age of 42 as a single parent. And actually she's seeing that as an apprenticeship has been a great way for her to switch her career, which I think is fantastic. And then if you just go on to my final slide, and Edward, I'm keeping an eye on time as well, so hopefully I'll just be a couple of minutes now. I think Microsoft is proud, and we are proud, and our customers and partners are proud of the work that this has done to support employers across the UK to build apprenticeships into their organisation. Many of whom we hear, and I've just heard downstairs, we're seeing the fruits of investing in diverse talent and the fresh perspectives that apprenticeships are bringing. And we know that this is of great interest with lots and lots of people. I think it was 63% of frontline workers are really excited about the opportunities that tech creates. But we're finding actually that a few things. One, we want to be able to grow the number of organizations investing in apprenticeships. That's why I'm here. That's why I hope we can continue this conversation. But also we want to support more people into apprenticeships, especially those from underserved and underrepresented backgrounds. So in 2021, we thought that we saw a gap. And it was at the heart of COVID, and we saw an opportunity to connect disparate talent acquisition process through the Microsoft Apprenticeship Connector. And the challenge was that we saw that partners, customers, organizations of all sizes were not able to fill their apprenticeship vacancies ultimately. And in turn, that meant that they weren't leveraging the levy transfer opportunities that Edward mentioned earlier. And actually, Microsoft had the opposite problem. We had too many applications for the roles that we have within Microsoft. So the Connector platform, which is live now, it's actually just been relaunched again. It recycles the wealth of Microsoft apprentice vacancies, applications, and allows organizations that use Microsoft tech to access a group of candidates that are all searching for that digital career. So leveraging the brand and the network that Microsoft has, we're able to help you raise your profile of opportunities in your organization and connect you with amazing people, either that be through apprenticeships and boot camps. 10,000 people have been connected to jobs so far. And one thing that I'm particularly pleased about is the fact that 45% of applicants, and counting, because we're always looking to increase this number, come from the top three, areas of high deprivation in the UK. And we're counting on everybody here, if we work together across different industries, across sectors, to really think about how do we accelerate the number of people from underrepresented, underserved backgrounds to get in to see apprenticeships as a great place to be. So the one call to action here would be that if you are, and to be honest, the chances are you may well be using Microsoft technology, you should be able to leverage the Microsoft brand and to connect with your future employees by going to the connector and really thinking about how we can work with you to find the talent that you're looking for in a digital world. And that just leaves me then to go on to the final slide to say we are really passionate about making a more connected talent ecosystem and supporting amazing people in every pocket of the UK to build fulfilling careers, be that a tech career in any industry or a tech-enabled career, in any role, in any job. And we would love to work with organizations large and small to make this a reality, so that people have great starts in life, and also organizations are able to succeed over the coming years. So thank you very much. And I'd love to hear from you. If you scan that QR code, where you can join us at one of our upcoming roundtables and learn more about how we can do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. That was very interesting, very engaging as well. And it's really good to hear that actually Microsoft is passionate about driving social mobility through upskilling individuals. And actually, obviously, you're a huge company, you're a big player in the digital tech space, and you do have lots of networks and links in your chain. So it is great to hear that actually you are passionate about it and that's what you want to do. So thank you for that. I will now hand over to Jessica. So I think, Jessica, you're also going to bring in a slightly different perspective, but I'm sure it'll be brilliant. So I'll hand over to Jessica.
Thank you, Edward. And Harry, I've certainly scanned that QR code already, so look forward to finding out much more about that on the 14th of March. Hope to see some of you there as well. So yeah, thank you for coming along. I've been asked to contribute to a masterclass on apprenticeships and skills boot camps, but I feel like I'm probably preaching to the converted. So rather than teaching Granny to suck eggs, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how we've implemented apprenticeships and skills boot camps. We actually call them skills academies, but I'm going to call them boot camps for the purposes of this because it's familiar terminology for you. And how we've really implemented those to enhance social mobility within our own workforce, but also for the employers that we work with within specific sectors like financial technology, fintech, which is a key sector in South Wales where we're based. And subsequently give you a little bit of insight into what we'll be bringing over the border into England very soon. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about me. So if I could have the next slide, please. Because my journey certainly hasn't been straightforward, I think is fair to say, and partly why I'm quite interested in the topic of social mobility. So I came from an inner city school in Cardiff. We didn't have a sixth form. I'd never heard of an A-level. Freshers was a TV programme. It had absolutely no context to me whatsoever. I came from an area of really sort of third generation worklessness. There were no major companies. We had a corner shop. We had a doctor's surgery. And we had a steelworks, I suppose. There were no institutions as such, no universities nearby, just a primary school and a secondary school. And that was really about it. So I guess there weren't many opportunities on the surface of it in the area that I grew up. But there was a lot of talent, particularly entrepreneurial talent. Now, I won't tell you what I was getting up to in school. I'll skip over some of that. But anyway, I suppose the trouble was for most of us, regardless of how, what we were capable of, what potential we had, we could never quite realize it because of the role models and the opportunities that we could see. I mean, most of us wanted to be footballers, we wanted to be drug dealers, or we wanted to be reality TV stars. Those were really the aspirations that seemed available to us if we were going to make it as such. Now, I really wanted to be a software engineer, which was a little bit unusual at the time. Nobody really knew what that meant. And I remember going along to see a careers advisor in Careers Wales when I was 14. And I said, really like to be a software engineer. And she looked at me, she said, oh, that's great. Go and get yourself a placement with the BBC and do some work experience as a news anchor. I felt very confused coming out of that meeting. I had no idea what that meant or how that was going to help me. So there was really no route to getting into these. I mean, we call them digital now, but digital wasn't really a word that we used back then. Digital kind of meant ones and zeros. So, the definition of that term has changed quite a lot, but there was no route to getting into these kinds of jobs. And so I just followed in my father's footsteps. My father was an aircraft electrician in the Ministry of Defence. He at one point had his own business as an electrician, working in people's houses, changing lights and sockets. And I got quite familiar with that from a young age. So I just went and did an apprenticeship. And that was very normal to me, despite the fact that I was obviously the only female on the course, as you can imagine. And turns out a very small percentage of electricians are female. It was as low as 1% when I completed my apprenticeship. So seems a little bit unusual on the surface of it. But for me, that was quite a sort of natural progression. And I was very fortunate that the college that I went to obviously spotted something in me. I don't know what it was. And they got me involved in something called the Engineering Education Scheme Wales. So there's a similar scheme in England. But basically what they do is they take young people, sort of 16 to 19-year-old people, and they link them with a company. That company then gives them an engineering project to work on, that kind of sets a challenge, if you like, and off they go, and we see what comes of it, and there's sort of a celebration at the end. So I was partnered with a local medical company and was asked to develop a fetal contraction monitor, something that was cheaper and more accurate than what they currently had. And the solution that we came up with within about 6 months saved the company around 99% in manufacturing costs. So needless to say, they were quite happy with it. And as a result, I became the first female UK Young Engineer of the Year. So it was a strange year for me, I suppose, going from that inner city school where, as I said, the extent of our aspirations were quite limited to suddenly being on BBC Breakfast News as the first female Young Engineer of the Year. So it kind of ignited something in me. That made me want more. It was life-changing. I mean, just that opportunity to go to London to be interviewed on BBC was life-changing for me because I'd never been outside of Cardiff. So, I suppose it just completely changed what life had in store for me. And 6 months later, I was invited to study astrophysics at Cardiff University. Brian Cox generation, that's all I'll say on that. And it was a big step up for me, but I graduated top of my class. I worked hard and I graduated top of my class. So I spent my early career in the Sony Corporation. I was headhunted in to lead a corporate strategic transformation project with all of the Sony factories globally. So again, 21-year-old, big opportunity for me, big step. I also continued my own upskilling journey. So I'd done my apprenticeship as an electrician. Unfortunately, I never really got to use it other than rewiring my own house from time to time, which I still do. But I did try and continue my own upskilling journey. So I did a management apprenticeship whilst I was at Sony, which I think, again, breaks that kind of perception that apprenticeships are for 16-year-olds and you only do one, because actually you can implement, as Edward was saying, a kind of progression pathway of apprenticeships. You can use them to move people internally as well as just bringing in talent. And that's something I'll talk about in a minute. But interestingly, the biggest challenge that we had in Sony, and my job was very engineering focused, but the biggest challenge that we had was recruiting and retaining higher technical skills. And it's interesting, you know, you think Sony, big brand, it must be easy to get the right people, but it really wasn't. And when we look closely at what the colleges and the universities were sort of churning out, there wasn't much of a fit, a skills fit. They were, you know, even basic things like soldering doesn't really get taught much in school anymore. So we really struggled to find the right people. And so we developed this concept of a skills academy. So it was internal to Sony. It was called the Sony Pencoed Academy in Bridgend in South Wales. And we basically created these progression pathways, worked very closely with Welsh Government, lobbied Welsh Government to kind of put new qualifications into the apprenticeship so that we could get what we needed as an employer. And we mixed those apprenticeships up with things like, we'd call them micro-credentials now, I suppose that wasn't a term then. So we were just sort of calling them, you know, industry certifications or vendor certifications, similar to what Microsoft can offer in terms of Azure and those sorts of things. And we developed this whole pathway of upskilling interventions. And it was really interesting because most of the people that we were engaging with had a really bad experience in school. So they may be in their 40s, maybe even in their 50s, and they'd hated school the first time round. They just couldn't engage with it. And the worst thing you could do is pick them up and put them back in a classroom, right? That wouldn't have worked. It would have been traumatic for a lot of people. So we had to build really authentic, organic training products that we could deliver internally as a business. And we had great success with it. I mean, we progressed and promoted more than 50 people through the academy in a very short space of time, you know, less than 18 months. So it was, you know, I still get contacts from time to time, just getting in touch. And I remember one chap, I like to think I sort of saved him. He was a bit of a naughty boy. He was an apprentice in Sony, and they weren't quite sure what to do with him. So I took him under my wing, and about a year ago, he got made Apprentice of the Year, which I was really proud of him. So, so we had really good success. And this was where I met my co-founder, Tom, and we later set up Youngo Solutions. So Youngo is a Latin word, it means to connect. And the idea is we really wanted to be that connective tissue between sort of employers, between training providers, colleges, universities, etc., and then talent. So again, a little bit like what Harry is doing with the Connector program. So I'm really keen to catch up with you on that, actually. So we now cover a range of different sectors. I mean, essentially at the heart of it, we're a training provider. We do consultancy as well, but we're a training provider, but we sort of specialize in employer-led upskill programs. So apprenticeships and accelerated apprenticeships, skills boot camps or academies, as we call them, and then micro-credentials and professional upskilling. And we cover a range of different sectors. So everything from advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, creative industries, digital industries, fintech, which is really big in Southeast Wales, and then hospitality and retail. So I suppose what I'm really saying with all of this is that I am a firm believer that talent is everywhere, but opportunity often isn't. And sometimes we have to create those opportunities, or we certainly have to make it visible, because it isn't visible to people like me, if you like, when I was sort of 14 or 15 in school. And I also believe that if we can change that perception, and if we can make visible these opportunities, then we can unlock that hidden talent. And this is really where we now start talking about sort of social mobility and how we fuel our organizational growth and our innovation capacity, and actually build prosperous communities around us by engaging talent in some of these hidden talent pools. So could I have the next slide, please? And I promise I won't spend as long on the others. So very recently, I worked with the Open University to write a white paper on L&D's role in social mobility. And if you're new to apprenticeships, and I suspect many of you aren't, but if you are new, or if you're trying to convince your organisation or your colleagues to invest in apprenticeships, then download a copy of the report, because it's filled with case studies, helpful hints, ideas, frameworks that you can kind of use and apply, and really sort of help you take that next step in investing in social mobility and apprenticeships. So this white paper is really split into sort of 5 sections. We firstly look at the socially diverse talent pool, and we try and come up with some lay definitions of what social mobility actually means and what social diversity means, because I think it's one of those terms, we've all heard of it, and we all kind of have a feel for what it is, but it's quite difficult to pin down. So we talk about some of that. We look at the 5 different types of social mobility, and you may be able to recognize some of this in your own businesses. So that's educational mobility, it's occupational, it's wage related, it's family income, which is really what Edward was talking about earlier, and also sort of wealth. So we look at those 5 types of social mobility. And then we look at some hidden talent pools, and there are so many, and they will be unique to your kind of region and unique to the industry that you operate in. And really there were too many to choose from, but we just picked 3 and did a bit of a deep dive on those 3. So we looked at refugees and migrants, which I think is a really interesting talent pool, particularly obviously given new refugees that have come across from Ukraine and from Afghanistan. There's huge opportunities there to engage some really, really talented people whose existing qualifications and experience may not obviously translate into the UK, but actually if you can work with them, you can unlock some really, really good skills there. We looked at former elite sports professionals. I mean, they say that the average athlete dies twice. So we looked at how we sort of help them to reintegrate and to find new careers, and how we look at some of the sort of mental health and well-being challenges that they may face, and how as organisations we can help to overcome that. And then finally, we looked at prison leavers and people in secure environments. And you may be aware that there's been some legislation in England recently which will allow apprenticeships to be delivered in prisons for the first time. So it's really, really exciting and a really, really big step forward for social mobility and for apprenticeships. Then we move on to talking about the role of L&D in enabling equitable progression. So back to what Edward and Harry have talked about in terms of creating these pathways, visualizing these pathways, using apprenticeships as an instrument, not just to recruit, but also to retain and to progress talent. And then finally, we look at some of those enablers in more detail. So I'm going to focus on 2. I'm going to focus on skills boot camps and apprenticeships, or accelerated apprenticeships. And I'm also going to try and give you a little sort of insight into what's working well, give you examples of good practice, both in England and in Wales. So I do sit on the board of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. I also am vice chair of the WJC in Wales, which is Wales's largest awarding organisation. So I've kind of got a foot in both camps. Nobody's ever happy. I can see all of the comments in the chat about the levy. No one's ever happy, but I promise you there are some really, really good things going on. And what I hope to do by the end of this is just unearth some of those things. If I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So yeah, I'll pass over this really, really quickly because it is in the report if you want to download it. But one of the really kind of useful things that I think came out of the report was this framework. So it's based on a balanced scorecard approach, but really what it starts with is obviously business needs. So looking at skills gaps, looking at behavioural and cultural gaps within the business where you may want to develop in terms of your representation. And then that flows into what are the core kind of methodologies you use when you recruit, the core principles, and I'll throw a few examples out there. So our recruitment philosophy is called the AAA framework. So it's attitude first, aptitude second, and ambition third. So what that means is if you're coming in with a can-do attitude, if you're going to kind of fit within our organization, you may not have the skills, the education, you may not have a single GCSE, it doesn't matter. If we think you've got the potential, and if we invest in you, in upskilling you, then you've got the potential to get to the level we need you to. And then your ambition fits, so we can give you what you need as an organization, then you're the kind of employee for us. So we try and take away any, any barriers, any obstacles that might exist. Qualifications are great in terms of demonstrating skills that you've got, but they're not needed as such. They're not necessary for many jobs. So we try and take away anything that isn't needed to make those roles accessible. In terms of recruitment then, so we operate a policy internally which says everybody is an apprentice. It's not always practical. It depends what apprenticeship frameworks and standards exist in the different regions. But I suppose what that means in principle is that everybody is on an upskilling journey. So even for me now, I'm just finishing my MBA at the moment. That's an example to my team that we should always sort of be investing in our skills for life, I suppose, if you like. And then thirdly, progression. So again, how do we upskill people? How do we select people for opportunities? How do we reward? How do we demonstrate visibility of pathways? How do we remove barriers? So apprenticeships may not be for everybody. For example, depending on the format of the apprenticeship, 1 day a week in a classroom may not work for everybody, but then there are other kinds of programs that are more flexible, that allow for independent learning, even using things like Udemy and Udacity as an example. So it's how do we find the right upskilling products for those people? And then all of that kind of framework leads into how do we benefit our community? How are we leaving our community in a better place because as an employer we exist, right? Because it's all well and good having a successful, profitable business, but ultimately our legacy will be how we leave the community that we serve and how much better off that community is. So looking locally at where you can engage with a local prison or engage with a refugee shelter, as an example, is a way that you can really leave your community in a better place. Next slide, please. So very briefly, because I appreciate we're not going to have any time for questions otherwise, these are the three kind of interventions that we see as being part of the toolkit, the complete talent solution, if you like, for an employer. So skills boot camps for me are all around recruitment. So if you're not familiar with these, they're typically between 8 and 16 weeks long. 10 we found is about right. You recruit people, ideally from socially diverse backgrounds, onto those boot camps, and you upskill them in a way that makes them useful to your organization almost immediately. So they hit the ground running when they come in. They may come in a fairly junior position, but obviously you continue that upskilling internally. It can really reduce recruitment costs actually for companies as well, because you almost get that kind of try before you buy. So there are loads of really, really good reasons why you might want to engage in a skills bootcamp model. The apprenticeships piece, or the accelerated apprenticeships, for me is more about retention. I know most companies use them as a recruitment mechanism, but actually I see apprenticeships as playing a really, really key role in terms of retention. The employers that we speak to, and ourselves included, the biggest challenge we face right now is keeping good people. I mean, the market is so volatile. Salaries are so hot at the moment. People are jumping around really, really easily. And so apprenticeships is really a demonstration of an investment in that employee. So I really see that as solving that retention piece. And then thirdly, professional upskilling, micro-credentials, however you want to sort of describe it. Really, that is about how do you progress and unlock more value in your employees as they go through your organization. Next slide, please. So very, very briefly, this is the way that we design skills boot camps. So it's completely employer-led. We sit with the employer, we do skills gap analysis, we model the academy around the needs of that employer. We recruit learners based on organizational fit. So looking at that AAA criteria, we deliver the academy, and then the employers kind of recruit the best performing learners out to the end of it. And we've had some really, really good results in terms of social mobility. So just on the left there, you can see our BAME representation, as an example, is really, really high on these skills boot camps, almost 2/3, to the point where we've even considered now, because a lot of our BAME population come from refugee and migrant talent pools, we're even sort of considering introducing English language support into some of these boot camps to really help those people get the best out of the experience. Female representation, I think we can still improve. I think Harry will probably echo similar challenges around engaging females in the digital space. It is difficult, but we're working on that. Same with sort of disability and neurodiversity. Really proud of our age range. So we've had an age range of 17 to 62 on our academy. So it really does work at all stages of your career. Next slide, please. And I think just in the interest of time, I'm suspecting, particularly after the presentations we've had already, you've got kind of a good understanding of apprenticeships and that there's a lot of information out there. So I think just to sort of close this off, I'd like to just share 2 case studies with you, and they're very, very short. And then I can make the slides available for anybody who wants to see them and have more detail on them, and happy to have conversations as a follow-up. But just 2 case studies to really demonstrate the impact of skills boot camps on an organization. So the one on the right-hand side, this is a man called Richard King, and he was a professional golfer. And I didn't know this, but they don't get paid very much. And the pay is very kind of dependent on their performance. So it's quite a challenging career to hold down, particularly when you move into sort of stages of your life where you're having children and you've got a mortgage and you've got to sort of, look after a family. So Richard, in his early 40s, came into our coding academy, our skills boot camp for fintech. And basically at the end of that 10-week process, he got recruited into Principality Building Society, which is one of the biggest employers in Wales, and he's doing really, really well. no technical knowledge beforehand, never really used a computer, and within 10 weeks he's employed as a software developer. The chap on the left-hand side there, James, I'll let him sort of introduce in the video, but James spent 17 years in the hospitality industry. So if we could just play that, and then I'll keep quiet from there on. There's no sound. Okay. All right, don't worry. So in the interest of time, I think we'll just share that, but just to quickly put a bit of colour on that situation. So James Allen spent 17 years in the hospitality industry. He was the manager of the Glee Club in Cardiff. Again, never picked up a PC beforehand, came on our Industry 4 full stack coding academy, which was designed specifically for the manufacturing sector, and found himself employed within a 12-week period with a sort of, they've just been acquired actually, but a German scale-up company that was investing in Wales. So he's based remotely, he's back and forth to Cologne, completely different kind of lifestyle, completely different career to what he ever thought he would have had. So they do work, they do have an impact. If you're not already doing apprenticeships and skills boot camps, strongly encourage you to look into the benefits, and happy to share these slides and answer any questions. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jessica. That was excellent. And just to say thank you as well for the beginning of your presentation, for bringing in your personal story. It's always really good to hear those kind of a personal background as well. And I was just going to say, I wrote down two bits to do with your presentation. Upskilling interventions. I thought that was that seems like a very good model to follow. And also your thinking around apprenticeships for retention. So I think that is a very relevant point. And I think maybe some organizations might not necessarily consider that. So it's something they can look to. So we posted a link to your white paper in the chat. So if any employer is interested, please go in, please download it, and please read it on that. We are sadly running out of time. We have gone over slightly. So I just think maybe, because we've had a few questions in on the levy, I thought maybe we just might ask one question on that. So maybe Harry, if I could bring you in. So we've had a question, we've had a few questions on the levy. And I just thought maybe if you could bring in Microsoft's perspective and what you do.
There's a couple of things. I think specifically for SMEs, I think there's the one question I saw is about levy and about how do we create a good environment in an SME for an apprentice. To start with the good environment, I think see an apprentice as a full-time employee. So this is an investment in both their and your future. It's not a quick fix. It's likely that person will be with you for more than a year, more than 3 years, and will grow to be a leader in your organization. So having those proper projects and the space to share ideas and learn, I think, is really critical. On the levy, I do not profess to be a levy expert, but what I can talk about is Microsoft is an apprentice levy employer. And we reinvest our surplus to fund apprenticeship training at all levels in the Microsoft Partner and Customer Network. So if you're eligible, it gives an opportunity to invest in the workforce without any kind of training costs. So either please connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like to know more about that, if you are a small business, and see how we can partner on that. We've helped to create 60 plus new apprenticeships in organizations in small organizations over the last year or so. And we're always looking for new customers and new small businesses to make sure that you're able to get that talent into your organization without the overheads that may come with it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Harry. I think because we're going over, we might have to close there. So unfortunately, Jessica, I can't bring you in for any questions and answers. But just to kind of finish off while we still got people on the call, just like to thank Jessica and Harry. Thank you so much for attending today, and thank you for bringing both your different perspectives along. And I'd also like to thank everyone who's attended today. As you can see on the side, we've got a couple of events coming up. So an event on Tuesday, 28th of February. So that's looking at increasing the careers advice, information on the labour market value of qualifications. So that's wider than employers, but thinking specifically more employers masterclasses We've got quite a few coming up over the next couple of months. So the art of storytelling to build inclusion, accents in the workplace, and using outreach to attract diverse talent. So I think I will close there because we're over. But yeah, once again, thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Harry, and thank you for all those who've attended.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.